he was cutting coconuts on Brick Lane, and I thought his performance was a bit tired. Basically discussed how you subtly communicate with a customer. For instance, if you're efficient, kind, you pay attention, then I think the customer tracks that energy and then in some way assumes that the food is going to have the same attention to detail. So it's important that when you're dealing with the customer that you're not shabby or in some way disconnected, apathetic, sarcastic, because it's like, yeah, that person's been messing about with my food. So I think that was the first thing. And then we kind of went down this path of sharing knowledge about not fatiguing another human being. We've all got a primal order. We're a nervous system, and it's all about conservation of life. So most of your language has to be that you're not dangerous, you're connective as a person. And if that harmonizes with your food, so when the people take in the food and then they produce blood from that food, the micro elements of the food are so bioavailable that they've said, okay, there's been no deficit speaking to this individual, and there's been no deficit from their produce either.
Yeah, it was kind of a model that was already existed, but it was outdated because it was based upon novelty. You can only get so far with being a novelty. It doesn't have longevity because you're not in people's mind more than once. It's like, okay, cool, I've got a coconut. Where do we go from here? There's no emotional bond with just the coconut. It's just a particular moment in time. It's sunny. You want to drink a coconut then. So I think the harder part was creating a model that was consistent in people's mind throughout the year rather than just one part of the year that was associated with summer and excitement. And that was based upon constantly, obviously it's the Islamic practice that we stick to anyway, which is not being affected by external factors. So the whole evolution of everything that we do was based upon that. You know, how can we survive the winter? Now we've got through the winter, then we get more confidence. Then we go into new dishes and products based upon what people show us that they might want. And it's a constant challenge as far as coming up with new ideas, you know, that are in line with, not being tired, not being burnt out, and showing people that.
I think my journey was, I think I met Ben at a time when I was making a transition from disarming the environment in order for me to feel safe through violence. And then it was suggested to me that I try different methods. I stopped thinking of the environment as volatile because I was carrying a lot of trauma from, that was my formative years, that for some reason, just because of your body type or shade of skin or whatever, people just walk towards you instead of saying hello, just hit you with a brick. Or call you a name. It's not. I don't really care about the names that they call you. It's the gesture in the face that primarily says you're going to be attacked. So I spent most of my life intimidating or disarming the environment for me to feel safe. So I had to, and being an empath as a child, I felt everything in a very amplified manner. So kind of like my coping mechanism was to become a narcissist. So I don't feel anything at all, almost psychopathic. You know what I mean? Because being open, let in extreme pain. And I think being that open, emotions are very extreme. So I was a very loving person. So all the other emotions didn't have a filter either. And I was like, I don't think I was born for incarceration. I think I was fighting abuse and all of that because I wanted freedom. So it was contradictory for me to choose a set of actions that eventually got me overwhelmed by lots of bodies with dogs and helicopters and shields and batons and mace and electricity. Do you know what I mean? So the other thing is that to create a different ambience within me, because a lot of the time I was probably alarming my own environment because I was walking around signifying that I was ready for something which probably frightened other people. You know what I mean? So they got the wrong impression of me. I was really fearful inside, but I was offensive to be defensive. So then what happened was that I was triggering everybody else, not knowing that my demeanor and whatever had to be threatening to feel safe. You do it so much that you forget that you move like that and your eyes are like that. So then and all these people look at me and they're trying to protect themselves from, it was just a vicious circle. So then I was at a point where it was like, okay, just be kind to yourself. So I started looking after my health and I started understanding that any type of intent in behavior that I had internally, I was anticipating that if I had these very negative and aggressive ways towards people, I was going to trigger that response. If I changed my energy and became kinder, more open, peaceful, salaming, these type of things, my primal system was saying, well, if you've got this behavior, you're not going to trigger it. And so when I found out after a little while, I was really just afraid of what I was going to trigger in people, really. So then we just came together. One of the things was to create this ambience in the body, which was to purify the diet. Because everything that we do is about transmutation. You're turning molecular structures into flesh. Whatever you eat, you eventually got to turn it into human flesh. Depending on what you're eating and how much that transmutation takes out of your life force to manufacture blood that's human out of a leaf. Do you know what I mean? Or turn something into an amino acid. It was to master a way of using the minimum amount of energy for the transition of whatever food you're eating into energy. So it was trying to find the most bioavailable food, being careful about what foods you're mixing together at the same time. Your state of mind when you're eating it, how much you eat, how you rest your body in between for the next time you're about to manufacture blood and stuff like that. So that's where we came up with Overstand Us, because it's not just about food. It's more about how you're accessing energy and how much energy you're using to access more energy. You know what I mean? So that's your social skills. That's the food choices that you're making. That's how you're eating. If you sit down, you absorb energy better than when you're walking around. So that's how these foods were developed. We then studied and found out that your DNA is used to certain food because your ancestors have been through all the poisons and gone, okay, this is safe. So you try to eat something that your DNA recognizes as familiar so that you don't set off alarm in the body and waste energy again with self-defense. So I think that's how we come up with the present recipes. And then there's the service, which is the same as being kind, being non-threatening, being inviting, being connective, offering to be helpful. You can anticipate primarily that none of that will really trigger an enemy in somebody. Unless there's a freak circumstance that somebody's really got issues. So basically it's just like sociologically we've got a very bioavailable way of dealing with other human beings. And the food has to harmonize with that anthem, so to speak.
I suppose, like obviously being someone who's been through a certain amount of trauma develops like a hypersensitivity, so you can see, the most sensitive person, how they will be, what the impact will have of any kind of negative interaction. So as far as that scanning, you always be able to scan the environment to see how to cover all of the different angles with regard to keeping people out of a cortisol state.
Yeah. For self-preservation, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you turn a negative into, we become experts at making sure that the environment is safe. We've been on markets before and other traders have closed up business and all of that, and you can get affected by that, and they'll tell you they'll talk generally and say, oh, the markets are not the same as they used to be, and it's not, the game is gone. But that's your specific experience. Your model isn't working anymore. You've got profit over people. When people don't have a lot of money, they want to be first. You know what I mean? So it's like, our model is that we'll put the time and energy, and you have to live a disciplined life. We watch what we eat, we watch how we sleep, we watch how we think. You know what I mean? How is the heart rotating? You know what I mean? Because our copyright is the amount of energy we're able to put in physically into preparing the food at this quality, even the prep and the hours that's put in. So people gravitate to life, we're finite beings, and one of the things that we hate most is our mortality. We feel it. This constant decreasing of energy until we die. And what's very gravitational with people is to see vibrancy in another person. You know what I mean? You might not be able to get over your depression, but if you see somebody vibrant, you can be carried away. The observer becomes the observed. So if, like Ben's skin is bright and healthy and he's vibrant and healthy, he can change the internal atmosphere of the person when they're in his environment. So it's like the philosophy of the musk seller. If you're selling perfume, the customer that comes to you goes away smelling of the perfume, maybe for a couple of days. You know what I mean? So it's like giving over that sociological perfume to the other person, then add to that they've actually internalized your care for them that is signified in your food and how it's prepared. So now what happens is that they've had an audio-visual experience with you. Now they've got an internal physiological experience with you because the food you've prepared has fortified them and nourished them. So they're connecting you, and their cells in their biological system now has had a relationship with you.
And that also keeps you that's doing that healthy as well.
Yeah, because the standard is vibrancy. I think the number one thing is overstand us as well, us, is to also realize is that the human being is at its most humane when you actually disappear and all you do is observe the environment. Like what you're looking at you don't want to have your shadow in it, then you can really connect with the detail of them. If you're making it a principle of I exist and I want to have an experience, then you're going to edit everything that you're interacting with to suit you. But if you disappear, you're going to see the truth in everything and just let it tell you what it is. It's like one thing I was saying to Ben when I said, when you're out with your daughter, don't call a duck, because your daughter will lose the bird. And she'll just only look at your interpretation of it. Let her tell you what she sees. Do you know what I mean? It's like instead of calling it a duck, just say Subhanallah and say how it makes you feel. God is great. God's perfect. Instead of duck. Do you know what I mean? So it's like the whole thing about them. If you want to absorb your environment, disappear. So all there is what you're observing. Because essentially that's all we are, is observation centers. But I'm not my name or my sex or any of these type of things, or my size or my weight. I'm an observation system. And as long as I'm out of the selfie, I'll see the whole. Do you know what I mean? And then there's only one thing to do, which is one of the aspects of Allah, is wonder. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what noises it makes, and you categorize the noise as, oh, that's negative or that's positive. It's something vibrating, resonating, displaying ratio because of the resonation. Do you know what I mean? Something internal is allowing this explosion and expansion and mutation. I don't want to get in the way of that show. So I'd rather disappear and just become what I'm observing. But you can only do that you got to be here. I can't observe you properly if I'm over that moment. I'll lose contact with you. If I've got cramp, I start to appear. You know what I mean? So the more health I have, the less noise that's coming from me, the more I can absorb you. Any aspect of creation that you give to Allah, you're going to be disappointed, because creation is a cranky, worried, self-absorbed situation. Allah is outside of that. I don't want any aspect of me to describe God. You know what I mean? I want to extra sensory perceive him through the artwork, but only aspects, which is, his mercy, or his creativity, the complexities, the balances, the dualism, the symbiosis. You know what I mean? Just for you to take in a breath of this invisible gas that allows you to be alive, there has to be the sun and the moon and Jupiter and Mars and whatever they call all of these constellations, and ants and the microbes that live on the hairs of ants, and all of them are as important as the macro and the micro, all working in symbiosis just for me to go, that's a lot of love. They put all of this clockwork together just for me to take a breath. A lot of love. And I'm, you know, I always say this, you know, I'm walking around thinking I'm so sophisticated and I'm Johnny Riley, but I could just be a microbe on the skin of a banana in the fridge, really, with a great imagination. But I am. And when I'm looking at all of this, just for me to exist and everybody else, you know, I've got an individual fingerprint. That's attention to detail. Like when you see a clockmaker working with tweezers, you know, and it's like the creator of all of this just went, 1 second, I'm making Johnny alone, and then you, and then you, and then you, placing each eyelash here. I just want to be here for the show, man. You know what I mean? And I don't want to disturb it. I don't want to hear my own popcorn rustling as I'm hearing the symphony. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like, that's why I like to fast, because there's even more silence, while the love, the sign language of love, the hieroglyphic of Allah is telling me I love you through everything.
What's one experience that you've had that made you realize or see the miracle of Allah, you could say, like right in front of you?
Through all of my rage, to have a feeling of guilt, I thought that was amazing, because I was pretty much like a shark once triggered. I had absolutely, the violent environments that I was brought up in, you don't think twice, you don't have any remorse, because they don't, you know. And then to sit alone and just go, I wish I wasn't like this. That little spark of humanity that I wasn't manufacturing, it was spontaneous. And I was like, oh, who's that? Beneath all of this coping mechanism. You know. I can't say that I was really sorry for the person that I was dealing with because they were trying to kill me. But I was sorry for me that I had to become that psychopathic in order to get on.
What was it like growing up for you from a young age?
Kidnap. You know, when I see my children are they kind of go through the same cruelty. I live in a very racist part of Holland. My kids have been spat on. They've been told, if you want to be my friend, you have to crawl on the floor. All of these type of things. Adults will even say it, stuff like that. But I've never heard my child respond, any of them, in any way derogatory. They just say, I'm really confused that this person is so volatile, because they want to connect and make friends, and they spoil their friends. I've never heard them, even in being victims, say I hate the person, or I'm going to hit them, they just look confused and disappointed that the person's not friendly, and that's it. I wasn't like that. I was like, no, you gotta hunt them and you gotta punish them. You know what I mean? And yeah, I think I'm learning from my kids. You know, because I thought I had power, but I was giving it away because these people were forcing me to mutate into something I wasn't. You know, and my children have shown me who I was before I had to put my innocence away and not allow the world to get at it anymore. You know. So eating well and stuff like that is starting to pinch yourself and come back alive again, because I was so obsessed with not feeling anything, not registering pain, any of these things, so that was safe, being numb, you know. Now, you know, just first thing is turn the body back on.
I don't really remember most of my childhood, to be honest. But what I've learned from it, I suppose, is in myself I have the tendency to seek to be powerful for whatever reason, because was made to feel like I didn't have power, and that's something I go through daily, try to correct that, as far as not resorting to looking down on people. I think beneath everything, and that's why it's very important for me to maintain the whole process of maintaining like food free from contaminants, because it reminds myself every day that I'm doing something which is not that. It's like it creates the epigenetics for not being that guy and not compensating in that way. So I think, yeah, most of my childhood, I don't have loads of recollection of it, but that's one thing I do know that was playing out in my adult life, was the need to feel power. You know, and that's something that I still deal with and work on.
Yeah, and all that does is remind. It doesn't take you away from when you were powerless.
Mm.
You know, that's actually the catalyst. The more you want powers, the more you know that what's driving it.
What made you realize that, you know, this was something that Islam is something that you need to be a part of? What made you realize that? How did that whole journey start?
It was like the counterculture to the structure that I had that didn't work for me. It was never working. Like my life was based upon that particular structure, you know, before that I was told this is what I need to do. Then there was actually something that was completely in line with everything about me, you know, the innate like what was already within me, you know. All of these sensory parts of me were activated that were dull before and subdued by distraction. So yeah, obviously they say the body's liquid crystalline, you know, and this is why sticking to a particular coding or practice rigidly without innovation, yeah, it just makes sense. I think there's no real struggles. The only struggle is perceived ideas of yourself and how you fit in within society.
My biggest struggle is with old ideas. You know, that when you were at your most gullible, adults were telling you that you're praised to be hardworking, and in order to amass a certain amount of wealth, in order to give that wealth away in consumerism, and basically everything about all of your complexity and your intelligence is just for that. And I was like, no, it's not. And then you're antisocial, you won't sit still, you've got ADHD, you've got this, you've got that. And I'm like, no, you're boring. I'm bored of this. I don't know why I'm bigger than this. I don't know where I'm supposed to be the size I am. but this ain't it. You know, the old idea keeps coming, because especially if the body's tired, to conserve energy, the brain will go with what it knows, because it doesn't have to study, dissect, or any of these type of things. It doesn't have to analyze. So my biggest struggle was not to fall back into the old idea and to stay within the no idea of me, because what's known is limiting. What's not known is the truth, because it's outside of what you were taught. So I don't want to know. I want the truth. All I need to be is master how you take the information in, which is to be ignorant and not afraid. You know, at the end of the day, it's all lights and whistles, audio visual proof of life coming at you. And I'm not grateful because I've got things. I'm grateful just because I'm conscious that I am. You know. But falling back into the old, you're just this and you should do that, from the plantation life. And they're programmers that they call teachers. They're not. They're indoctrinators. You know, I'm not here to turn up to make somebody ultra rich and them use me like I'm a battery. You know what I mean? I'm here to spend my life going, what? That's it. I'm still doing it at 61 years old. Wow. Oh, really? Wow. That means I'm outside of, but if I go, I know that, I knew that would happen. Yeah, you're gone, man. You're a prison. If you know everything, you're owned. You know what I mean? It's all secondhand. If you know that, you've been there before. I don't want to know. I don't want the known. But I've got to be fit. You know what I mean? I've got to be healthy to take on more of the wow. You know, I've got to be wow.
What would be a message to all the people out there who are struggling with mental health, depression, traumas? Could be young people, old people, mothers, fathers.
Unity.
How would you get?
We like our body. We are like our body.
Say that again.
We are like our bodies. You know, unification, symbiosis means living. When we become disconnected, it's almost like if you take any herd animal, the one that gets separated gets eaten. So all of our tension is because we're all separative. You know, we can't get away from how we're primarily mapped. You know what I mean? When there's unity, there's comfort. Somebody's going to share food, somebody's going to stand in front of you, somebody's going to put their hand down and pull you up, somebody's going to catch you. That's what unity does. Unity. You'll even digest your food better because you go, I'm going to help that person tomorrow. I'm going to be one of those ants holding the other ant, and making a bridge. You know what I mean? So when when you're just like me, I, me, how much food do you need to digest? Looking like a donut, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Then you're just a hole with a bum around it. What are you doing?
I guess that goes for everything else as well. Money, you know, that in
Yeah, but, I mean, why are you amassing what they call money and just looking at it? I've got this amount digitally. Look, I'm like, right, 0, 0, 0. What does that mean, mate? That you're invincible? But there's no blood flow in you because you're not. What are you doing getting up? You're getting up tomorrow to feed 100 children. You're not interested in that. But the one that's rich is the one that's got something to do tomorrow about projecting onto somebody else the care that they have for their own body because they care about another organism that's mirroring them. If you're charitable to somebody, you can guarantee you look after you too. Somebody that's mean to somebody is mean to themselves as well. They're just acting out the poetry of who they are on something that they recognize as part of themselves. Bone structure, that's me. That's, and you're just simulating how you feel about yourself on something that represents you because it's another human. Unity is calms the nervous system. People around them
so that unity
that are sensitive, you need to keep convincing them that there's somebody around that means that you have to be consistently their friend. This is why I go into the mosque 5 times a day, trying to go to the mosque, praying in Jamaat. I understand the social science of that. Because there could be lonely people, but they go in the mosque, they're standing ankle to ankle and shoulder to shoulder with another human being. You finish the prayer, Assalamu alaikum. Smile is a sunnah. Embracing is even more. And you consistently turn up for other human beings until neuroplasticity, is that what they call? Plasticity or something? Yeah. That happens because you're conscious, and eventually their neurons will turn over and they'll just say, I'm not alone, obviously. But some other person's got to help them with that. We've got to turn up for them to change their mind.
How would you do that without making it seem like you're forcing them? So, like, let's say I go to a brother that I know, he's saying he feels alone. Now, if I'm every day turning up to his door and saying, come to the masjid.
Being alone is fine. Being lonely is another thing. Nothing wrong with being alone. I'm not alone when I'm alone. I'm with Johnny Riley. You know what I mean? He suggests some great things because let's eat this, it's good for our body. Let's exercise, let's write poetry. I like him. I'm definitely not lonely when I'm alone. But if he's lonely, then we say, okay, who are you sitting with? Is he well? I don't really like him. Why is that? Because I bun weed. I have a hangover. I'm an alcoholic. I don't like my physiological friend. Well, how about we change him then? Let's start there. Now who are you spending time with? A guy called Health. What does he do for you? Oh, he's suggesting for me to go for a run. He's suggesting for me to be a parent. He's suggesting to me to make something for somebody. Do you get what I'm saying? But they're always the first deprivation of humanity known in history books is eating something forbidden. It all goes downhill from there because you've changed the kilohertz. It's not playing back vitality and health anymore. There's a disturbance. But all of these things, you can make tawbah. You can turn them around. You just stop doing the bad thing you were doing and the body forgives you and goes back to health. And it will always forgive you. As soon as you stop doing what you're doing, it doesn't hold grudges. You know what I mean? As soon as you stop doing what you're doing, it goes, oh, hi, welcome back. Here's more gifts. But you have to walk to it for it to run to you.
You mentioned forgiveness there. How important is forgiveness for an individual?
You got to know why. That the why of forgiveness, like it's healthy. You know what I mean? If you don't forgive yourself for being a crackhead, you'll stay a crackhead. You know what I mean? You need to go, you know, you're better than this. I believe you can, you know what I mean? I don't hold a grudge for all the mutation you did to this body by doing this drug. I understand why you started taking it. You have that conversation with yourself. Now it's not somebody that you've demoralized and who will only go and take more crack to get away from the shame of you going, ugh. Do you know what I mean? But if you go, you're better than this and you're this, that guy, eventually he's going to want to stay more conscious for more compliments. You know what I mean? So you got to understand that forgiveness is a mechanism. It's a tool. It's a technique. It's an art, a martial art.
One of my friends mentioned once that istighfar and gratitude opens the heart and the mind, and he advised me to do it every morning.
Yeah, it's a frequency. Gratitude is a frequency. It means you're fed. Can't have fear with gratitude. They can't live together.
Said a lot, man.
Anything else, Benny boy?
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully going forward, we come up with more recipes for our human community. And hopefully they smell emotionally the musk through the attention to detail in the food, the eye contact, the sharing of information. And when they come away from us, that they're still resonating with, that they've met human beings that cared about them before we even met them. Us.
What does os mean? I need to...
Overstand us.
Overstand us.
Huh?
Overstand us.
Okay.
But martial artists also say us. And it's kind of like, yes, I agree. You know what I mean?